It was way past midnight, and she still couldn't fall asleep. This night the dream was leaving. She tried so hard to keep. And with the new day's dawning, she felt it drifted away. Not only for a cruise, not only for a day.
Oh man. Okay. Uh, let's go and get rid of this for now. Okay. All right. So I'm back. I'm gonna go to the gym, do 2 miles on the elliptical. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but it'll get my body moving and help everything work out. So every day at 3 o'clock, around there. All right. We read the truth about copper, and I'm the example, I think, in some ways, of how the copper helps you get stronger and healthier and able to do things like yesterday and then recover, say. I think that's important. Recovery is what it's all about. Same with your skin. And when you have burns or you have cuts or you have surgery, I don't know why. I tried to explain how my knee was gashed wide open. I didn't go to the hospital, save myself thousands of dollars, and probably came out better in the end. If anybody wants to check that out, I'll gladly go see a doctor. But the copper works in two ways. You got the cream, which I used like crazy last night on my back and my hips. My wife put it on for me, and within about 20 minutes, you're able to move. It doesn't, in my case yesterday, it didn't totally remove all the pain, but it's amazing. And then I was going to sleep and I was starting to get the leg cramps. And this is where you can feel you bend your leg just a little bit and you can feel it's getting ready to lock up on you. And I drank a ton of water, man. I went through like 20 some bottles of water, but and had bananas, but it was getting ready to do it on me, and I had her rub it on the backs of my leg and down up and down the muscle on both of them, and I slept through the night without any cramps. Now you can look at me and say, "Oh, you're just trying to fool me or sell me something." Bullshit! I don't care. It's like I gave some samples to my doctor and their associates there to get a review from them of how the product worked for them because they're in the medical field. Okay. And then I get this one because she gave it to her other friend. It kind of ticked me off. I'm like, why'd you give it to her? Why didn't you just give it back to me? Oh, well, I'm sure she still got it. And she went over and picked it up off the can and brought it over to me and said, and then, oh, by the way, there's no soliciting in here. And I said, soliciting? I'm not solicited. I never solicited anything. And then she said, or promotions or whatever. And then I said, I'm just trying to tell you how I got rid of my eczema, which has been on the freaking medical records for 35 years. And you don't give a shit. That pisses me off. Okay. All right. You know what probably started off was when I went in and I'm sitting there talking to the doctor and I said, oh, did you hear about Fauci? Oh, no, I didn't hear it. Isn't he retired? What is that? What is that? You're in the medical field and you don't know about a guy that used medicine and used his doctor, his Hippocratic oath, to kill millions of people and ruin lives that are still walking around today. The vaccine was worse. Nobody listens. I don't care. Don't listen. I'll just tell you that I just did the work of 2 men yesterday at 116 degrees. I got no sunburn. I'm going to the elliptical and I'm going to do 2 miles in 15 minutes. And then later I'm going to do my 5,000 crunches. I'm 67 years old. How do I do it? It's the copper and the proper diet and the supplements that work. Copper is the conductor. Okay? You either believe it or you don't. And the formula Jared put together, you don't even need CBD. You use that icy hot or any of that happy horse shit. It smells like crap. It don't work. You can put this on in 20 minutes. If it don't stop the pain, text me. I'll buy it back from you, okay? Because I want it back, because that's how important it is. All right? Now I'm going to read the truth about copper. I narrated it. I got some idea about how this works in the mitochondria and how it works with the metallochaperones and how it works in your body. Some idea. After I read the book a couple of times, then I narrated the book, then I listened to the book over and over and edited 300 edits because it's hard to say nicotinic acid and all these other carcinogen words that make you crazy. All right. So here's the truth about copper. You listen to it. I'm going to go prove it. Okay. I'm going to go use it and do it. And if you want to order. It's right there.
This book is autographed. Mark, thank you for all your hard work in this copper world. Enjoy the book and learn all you can so we can spread the word.
I did.
Jared. Right?
And I am.
That's what we're doing, Mark.
It's what I'm doing.
We're about the truth about copper.
Promises made, promises kept.
Through frequency, energy, and bioavailable copper. All right, so.
Am I yelling?
This book is copyrighted 2026, Jared K. St. Amand, all rights reserved. So let's go right to the introduction.
All right, here we go.
Why copper? Why now? Copper is one of the oldest elements known to humanity and one of the most misunderstood. For thousands of years, copper has been used for tools, medicine, currency, and protection against disease. Important, yet often treated as a simple mineral trace, evaluated by quantity rather than form, function, or biological context. That oversimplification has led to confusion, misuse, and missed potential. This book exists to correct that misunderstanding. The truth about copper is not a claim copper is new. It is a clarification that copper's state, delivery, and interaction with living systems matter profoundly. When copper is handled incorrectly, it can contribute to imbalance. When delivered in its proper form, it functions as one of biology's most essential conductors of electrons, signals, and regenerative processes. This is not a memoir. It is a supplement guide, and it is not speculative wellness philosophy. All right? It is an examination of copper as chemistry, biology, and energy, working together rather than isolation. What this book is and is not. This book is written for readers seeking clarity beyond marketing, language practitioners and innovators, demanding mechanistic understanding, and anyone questioning why modern approaches to healing often ignore foundational elements. This book does not claim copper alone heals. Healing is always a system-level process. Copper's role is to remove interference, restore coherence, and allow biological intelligence to operate as designed. Throughout this work, copper is treated not as an additive, but as an enabler. How this book is organized. The chapters progress intentionally. Chapters 1 through 3 will establish copper's historical role, chemical states, and modern misuse. Chapters 4 through 6 explore copper as a conductor within physics, biology, and environmental systems. Chapters 7 through 9 examine chemistry, frequency, interaction, and ethical application. Chapters 10 through 12 address healing, legacy, and the future of copper-based understanding. Supporting appendices, sources, and references provide technical grounding for readers who wish to explore deeper. This book does not ask you to believe. It simply asks you to understand. And table of contents with all the chapters: origin of copper, discovery of copper, the truth about copper misuse, Tesla and the resonant field, the human conductor, healing the earth with BioCU1, the chemistry of healing, frequency, medicine, and the harmonizer, the business of healing, veterans, energy, and legacy, the divine blueprint, the future of copper consciousness, the proper copper returns humanity to balance, and then, of course, the appendices, glossary, and references and sources. So, in the acknowledgments, this is very important. I've heard this story several times. I'd like to thank my dear friend Charlie Barker, who has laid to rest on December 5th, 2022. Charlie was one of the most cherished souls I've ever known, quick-witted, kind, and full of humor. His spark and energy were unforgettable, and his curiosity about copper began one of the most life-changing chapters of my journey. We met on June 29th, 2017 in Denver, Colorado, while I was sharing my story about hemp with a family that had a newborn on a rental shuttle. As I stepped off the bus, Charlie ran up to me, introduced himself, and with a serious look, he took his finger and twisted it near my belly and said, "You're the key to the world." 2 weeks later, July 13th, 2017, Charlie showed up again, this time with his good friend Eric, his Denver buddy. But before that visit, he called me first and asked me to meet him at his favorite restaurant. We met. We finished. Poof. He ran out the door and said, "I'll race you to your house." I lived 45 minutes away, and somehow we arrived at the same time. He came in, met my boys, and said, "Hold on a minute." He walked out to his car, came back, and handed me something that would change my life forever. A kilo of Cuperus nicotinic acid, Kuner Musker. From that moment forward, my world changed. We thank you, Charlie, and love your family. We love you and honor your legacy. To our founding company owners at Midos Energy, we say thank you for your continued support to Scott Daly, Marge Van Handel, and Eric Van Handel, as well as all the others who support the continued education with copper. This book addresses the importance of copper, whether considered in the context of electricity or scientific applications. The insights and knowledge you gain from this book will depend on your perspective and your interests. Chapter 1. The origin of copper and the three states of matter. In every age, humanity has mistaken power for understanding. Copper has paid the price for that confusion. Copper is one of the oldest elements ever known to humankind, and paradoxically, one of the most misunderstood. Long before modern chemistry, before electrons were named or oxidation states defined, copper shaped civilization itself. It was the first metal humans learned to mine, refine, and manipulate. Entire eras, the Copper Age, the Bronze Age, were named after it. Yet, despite this intimacy, humanity never fully learned copper's true nature. Instead, it learned how to use copper, not how to respect it. That misunderstanding persists today, and it begins with a failure to distinguish copper's three fundamental states of matter and biology. Copper is a civilizational catalyst. Archaeological evidence places copper being used as far back as 9000 BCE, when early societies discovered that certain green-blue stones could be smelted into malleable conductive metal. Copper reshaped tools, trade, architecture, medicine, and warfare. It enabled plumbing, coinage, electrical grids, and eventually the modern technological world. But ancient civilizations did not understand copper as chemistry. They understood it as alchemy. Copper was associated with Venus, beauty, healing, and conductivity, both physically and spiritually. Egyptian medical texts reference copper compounds for wound treatment. Greek physicians used copper vessels for water purification. Roman engineers relied on copper for infrastructure that still survives today. What they did not do was isolate copper into unnatural biochemical forms and force it into the human body without understanding its consequences. That mistake would come much later. The three faces of copper. Modern science recognizes copper as redox active element, meaning it shifts between different electron states. These states are not interchangeable. They behave differently. They interact differently with biology, and they determine whether copper heals or harms. The first state, Cu0, is copper in its elemental metallic form. This is the copper of wires, pipes, coins, and antennas. It conducts electricity efficiently and resists microbial growth on surfaces. In this state, copper is biologically inert. It does not easily enter cells or participate in enzymatic reactions. Metallic copper belongs in infrastructure, not supplementation. When copper remains metallic, it is stable. When it corrodes, oxidizes, or leaches, it changes state, and the danger begins. Cu2, oxidized copper's toxic state. Cu2, cupric copper, is copper that has lost 2 electrons. It is the form most commonly found in drinking water from copper plumbing, conventional copper supplements, poorly formulated skincare products, oxidized copper salts. This is where the world went wrong. Cu2 is highly reactive. In biology, it generates oxidative stress, disrupts protein folding, and interferes with neurological signaling when improperly handled. Unlike its reduced counterpart, Cu2 can bypass the liver's protective routing systems and enter circulation as free copper. Over time, this leads to accumulation, not healing. The scientific literature is clear. Cu2 toxicity behaves differently than copper overload diseases. It is subtle, chronic, and cumulative. It damages cognition, mitochondrial efficiency, and cellular communication. And yet, this is the form still used universally in supplements. Why? Because Cu2 is cheap, stable, water-soluble, and misunderstood. Cu1, reduced copper, life-sustaining state. Cu1, cuprous copper, is copper in its biologically preferred form. This is the copper that enters cells through regulated transporters, assembles mitochondrial enzymes, supports cytochrome C oxidase, enables superoxide dismutase, and facilitates cellular respiration and ATP production. Cu1 is the copper of life, not corrosion. Evolution designed human biology to recognize and safely process Cu1. Specialized transport proteins exist specifically for this state. Once inside the body, Cu1 is chaperoned, allocated, and utilized with precision. It does not roam freely. It does not accumulate improperly. It communicates, and communication at the cellular level is everything. How civilization misunderstood copper's proper form. The industrial age collapsed copper complexity into convenience. When copper plumbing spread across the modern world, Cu2 leaching into drinking water became normalized. When supplements were industrialized, cupric salts were chosen for shelf stability, not biological intelligence. When skincare companies chased antimicrobial claims, oxidation was ignored. The result was a world flooded with the wrong copper. Not because copper is dangerous, but because form matters. Just as oxygen can sustain life or cause oxidative damage, depending on the context, copper can heal or harm, depending on its state. This failure to distinguish between copper, Cu0, Cu2, and Cu1 created a medical blind spot that persists to this day. This book exists to correct that error. Setting the stage for the proper copper revolution. Understanding copper's three states is not academic exercise. It's the foundation for everything that follows. The discovery of Kuhner-Muspera, the stabilization challenge that led to BioCU1, the failure of conventional supplements, the intersection of copper frequency and bioelectric healing. Copper was never meant to be forced into the body indiscriminately. It was meant to be conducted like energy, like truth. In the chapters ahead, we will move from history into science, from misuse into restoration, and from confusion into clarity, because when copper is returned to its proper form, something extraordinary happens. Biology remembers how to heal. Chapter 2 is the discovery of Kuhner-Muspera copper 1. Every breakthrough begins as a contradiction to what everyone else believes to be true. For over a century, copper supplementation followed a single, flawed assumption that copper's biological value was independent of its oxidation state. This assumption shaped medicine, nutrition, dermatology, and public health policy. It also blinded an entire industry to a critical truth, one that biology had understood all along. Copper does not function as a generic mineral. It functions as a signal, a catalyst, and a conductor, and only in the correct form. The rediscovery of that form is where Kuhner-Muspera begins. The problem no one wanted to solve. Copper deficiency had long been recognized as harmful. Enzymatic dysfunction, mitochondrial fatigue, and neurological issues, immune compromise, all pointed toward insufficient copper availability. Yet attempts to correct deficiency produced inconsistent and often damaging results. Why? Because copper supplementation was solving the quantity problem while ignoring the form problem. Conventional supplements deliver copper exclusively as Cu2, the oxidized reactive state, While it satisfied labeling requirements and elemental intake calculations, it failed biologically. Worse, it introduced long-term toxicity risks that were subtle enough to evade immediate detection. Researchers began to notice a paradox. Food-based copper appeared safe. Supplement-based copper did not. Drinking water copper correlated with cognitive decline, yet copper itself was essential to life. This contradiction demanded an explanation. The biological preference for copper 1. At the cellular level, copper transport is not passive, it's selective. Human cells possess specialized transporters, most notably CTRI, copper transporter 1, that preferentially recognizes and transport Cu1, not Cu2. Once inside the cell, copper does not flow freely. It is escorted by mellochaperones to precise destinations. Mitochondria, antioxidant enzymes, electron transport complexes, cellular signaling hubs. This choreography only works when copper enters its reduced state. Cu2 disrupts this system. It bypasses regulation, generates oxidative stress, and accumulates improperly. Cu1, by contrast, integrates. The implication was unavoidable. If copper is to heal, it must arrive as Cu1 and remain Cu1 long enough to matter. That requirement presented an enormous challenge. The stabilization problem. Cu1 is inherently unstable. In the presence of oxygen or water, Cu1 readily oxidizes to Cu2. This is why most industrial processes avoid it. It is chemically inconvenient and requires protection. It demands precision. For decades, this instability was treated as barrier-proof, that Cu1 was impractical for supplementation. In reality, it was a filter. Only a formulation that respected copper's chemistry rather than forcing it into compliance could succeed. The breakthrough came with chelation, not as a means of immobilization, but as a means of guided delivery. Kuehner-Muspere. Copper, nicotinic acid, and biological intelligence. Kuehner-Muspere is a copper nicotinic acid complex engineered specifically to maintain copper in the +1 oxidation state, protect it from premature oxidation, enhance cellular uptake, deliver copper where it is biologically needed, free radical chaos. Nicotinic acid, vitamin B3, was not chosen arbitrarily. It plays multiple synergistic roles. It stabilizes Cu1 through coordination chemistry. It increases lipophilicity, improving membrane passage. It supports NADA production, mitochondrial respiration, and energy metabolism. It supports NAD production, mitochondrial respiration, and energy metabolism. It complements copper's role in electron transport and oxidative balance. Together, copper and nicotinic acid form a compound that behaves less like a supplement and more like a biological courier. Copper is not dumped into the system, it is escorted. Federal recognition and NDIN validation. The legitimacy of Kuehner-Muspere was not established through marketing claims or anecdotal enthusiasm. It was established through regulatory scrutiny. The compound was submitted and accepted under FDA New Dietary Ingredient Notifications NDIN 893 and NDIN 910. These filings acknowledge not only the novelty of the compound, but its safety profile and biochemical rationale. This mattered. NDIN recognition means the compound is chemically distinct. Its mechanism is understood. Its manufacturing process is defined. Its biological behavior has been evaluated. In a marketplace flooded with loosely defined supplements, Kuehner-Muspere stood apart as a recognized new entity. Mitochondria, where copper becomes energy. Copper's most critical role unfolds inside mitochondria. Within these cellular power plants, copper is required for the assembly and function of cytochrome C oxidase, the terminal enzyme of the electron transport chain. Without copper, electron flow stalls, ATP production falters, energy collapses. Cu1 is the form mitochondria recognize. Kuehner-Muspere's ability to deliver copper efficiently into cells and into mitochondria translates into improved electron transfer, increased ATP synthesis, reduced oxidative stress, enhanced cellular resilience. This is not stimulation, this is restoration. Why Kuehner-Muspere changed everything. Kuehner-Muspere did not introduce copper to biology. It returned copper to biology in the form biology expects. The distinction reshaped how copper could be used safely, intelligently, systematically, without accumulation of toxicity. It also exposed the fundamental flaw of the existing copper market. Copper was never a problem. The wrong copper was. From Kuehne Musker to BioCU1.com. Kuehne Musker solved the delivery problem. BioCU1 would go on to solve the application problem, especially in topical and frequency integrated context. That evolution rests entirely on Kuehne Musker's foundational insight. Copper heals when it arrives reduced, protected, and respected. The proper copper revolution began here, not as a theory, but as a verified chemical reality. Chapter 3, The Truth About Copper Misuse. The most dangerous substances are not poisons, they are half-understood necessities. Copper did not become dangerous because it was misunderstood, it became dangerous because it was oversimplified. Once copper was reduced to a numeric value, its elemental requirement measured in milligrams, its chemistry, context, and biological intelligence were quietly discarded. What followed was not malicious intent, but systematic error, an industry-wide failure to ask the most important question: which copper? The myth of more copper. Modern supplementation operates on a flawed premise that deficiency can be corrected by increasing the intake. This logic works for some nutrients. It does not work for copper. Copper is not consumed to be used indiscriminately. It is consumed to be allocated. The body maintains copper homeostasis through tightly regulated pathways involving intestinal transporters, hepatic processing, metallochaperone proteins, mitochondrial insertion mechanisms. When copper enters in the correct form, this system functions seamlessly. When it enters incorrectly, the system is bypassed. The result is not balance, but accumulation. How copper supplements fail. All conventional copper supplements use cupric salts, Cu2. These compounds are chosen because they are inexpensive, shelf-stable, water-soluble, easy to manufacture. They're not chosen because they are biologically optimal. Cu2 behaves differently than food-derived copper. It enters the circulation too quickly, just like my dog just entered the room incorrectly. It bypasses liver regulation. It contributes to the pool of unbound or loosely bound copper, often referred to as free copper. This is not copper doing its job. This is copper without supervision. Over time, excess Cu2 contributes to oxidative stress, mitochondrial inefficiency, protein misfolding, neurological vulnerability, and cognitive decline. See? These effects are not immediate, they are chronic and therefore easy to ignore. Drinking water, the invisible exposure. Copper plumbing was introduced as a public health improvement. In many ways it was. But copper pipes introduce a variable that was never fully studied: continuous low-dose Cu2 ingestion. When water sits in copper pipes, especially under acidic conditions, copper leaches into the water as Cu2. Unlike dietary copper, this copper is inorganic, unbuffered, immediately bioavailable, not routed through food-based metabolic pathways. This exposure is subtle. It does not trigger acute toxicity. It accumulates silently over decades. Population-level data reveal correlations between widespread copper plumbing and increased neurodegenerative disease prevalence, particularly when compounded by supplemental Cu2 intake. Again, the issue is not copper itself, it is the form and the root. Skincare and the oxidation trap. Topical copper products often market themselves as anti-aging or antimicrobial. Many of these claims are technically true, but incomplete. Copper ions can stimulate collagen production. Copper surfaces reduce microbial load. But when copper is formulated incorrectly, especially in water-based systems, it oxidizes rapidly into Cu2. This presents two problems. Instability, the active form degrades before it reaches the skin. Inflammation, oxidized copper can irritate tissue and disrupt skin homeostasis. Many products rely on copper peptides or salts that oxidize in contact with air or moisture. These formulations prioritize label claims over biological fidelity. True copper-based healing requires oxidation control, delivery precision, tissue compatibility. Without these, copper becomes cosmetic theater, not medicine. Why Cu2 toxicity is different from copper overload. Copper overload disorders such as Wilson's disease involve genetic failures of copper excretion. These conditions are dramatic, identifiable, and medically managed. Cu2 toxicity is different. It does not overwhelm the system, it sidesteps it. Tiny amounts of Cu2 entering circulation repeatedly over extended periods create a distinct pathology. No immediate symptoms, gradual cognitive changes, subtle mitochondrial dysfunction, increased oxidative burden. This is why Cu2 toxicity was missed for so long. It does not behave like poison. It behaves like noise, interfering with the cellular communication until clarity is lost. The market myth exposed. This supplement industry rarely distinguishes copper forms because doing so complicates messaging. Copper sells. Cu1 versus Cu2 requires education. As a result, consumers are misled, clinicians receive incomplete information, copper is blamed for outcomes caused by misuse. The irony is profound. Copper is condemned for damage caused by its incorrect implementation. Reframing the question. The question is not, should humans consume copper? The question is, should humans continue consuming the wrong copper? Biology has already answered this. Food-derived copper, which exists predominantly in the reduced state, is handled safely. Copper delivered through intelligent chelation and stabilization integrates effectively. Copper forced into the system as Cu2 accumulates. One heals, one harms. All right, the cost of ignoring form. When copper is misused, the consequences ripple outward. Healthcare systems misattribute causes. Neurodegeneration is normalized. Fatigue is treated symptomatically. Energy decline is accepted as aging. All while the root issue, copper form mismatch, remains unaddressed. The proper copper revolution is not about adding something new, it's about correcting a fundamental error. Preparing for the next shift. Understanding misuse clears the ground for reconstruction. The next chapter moves beyond chemistry into resonance, where copper conductive nature intersects with frequency, vibration, and the laws that govern energy itself. Copper is not merely a mineral, it is a biological conductor, and conductors respond to frequency. All right, we're in chapter 4, Tesla 369, and the resonant field. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla did not speak in metaphors when he described energy, frequency, and vibration. He spoke as an engineer, one who understood that nature organizes itself through resonant systems, not static parts. The modern world remembers Tesla for electricity. What it forgets is that Tesla was obsessed with how energy organizes matter. Copper sits at the center of that obsession. Resonance is not mysticism. Resonance is a measurable physical phenomenon. It occurs when a system responds most efficiently to a specific frequency. Bridges collapse when wind frequencies match structural resonance. Lasers function through resonant cavities. Cells communicate through oscillatory signals. Biology is not exempt from physics. It is governed by it. Every cell maintains electrical gradients. Every membrane holds potential. Every mitochondrion operates as an electrochemical engine. Frequency is not external to life. It is embedded within it. The question is not whether frequency affects biology. The question is whether biology is equipped to conduct it. Copper is nature's conductor. Copper is unique among biologically essential elements. It is redox active, electrically conductive, catalytically versatile, capable of rapid electron exchange. These properties make copper indispensable to electron transport. the functional process underlying metabolism and energy production. In mitochondria, electrons move through precisely arranged pathways. Copper atoms serve as electron handoff points, allowing controlled flow without chaos. This is not chemistry alone. It is signal fidelity. Where electrons move cleanly, energy is produced efficiently. Where electrons flow degrade, fatigue, inflammation, and dysfunction follow. The meaning of 369. Tesla never published a formal paper on 369. What he left behind were remarks, observations, and an intuitive recognition that certain numerical relationships repeat across physical systems. Interpreted correctly, 369 is not numerology. It is pattern recognition. 3 represents initiation and direction. 6 represents balance and circulation. 9 represents completion and integration. In oscillatory systems, these phases appear repeatedly: wave generation, wave propagation, wave revolution. In biological terms, signal initiation, signal transmission, signal integration. Copper participates in all 3. Copper and oscillatory biology. Cells do not communicate through static chemistry, they communicate through ion gradients, electrical potentials, rhythmic signaling, phase coherence. Copper-containing enzymes regulate mitochondrial respiration, antioxidant balance, neurotransmitter synthesis, immune signaling cascades. These processes are not linear, they are oscillate. CU1 enables this oscillation by allowing controlled redox cycling, the biological equivalent of tuning a circuit rather than flooding it with current. CU2 disrupts this rhythm. CU1 sustains it. Why frequency fails without proper copper. Frequency-based therapies, sound, light, electromagnetic modulation, depend on biological receptivity. A signal cannot heal a system that cannot receive it. Copper deficiency or copper misaligned systems lose coherence. Membranes lose responsiveness. Mitochondria lose efficiency. Signaling becomes noisy. Inflammation replaces regulation. This is why frequency interventions produce inconsistent results when copper biology is ignored. Copper does not replace frequency, it enables resonance, from electricity to bioelectricity. Tesla worked with this macroscopic systems, coils, currents, fields. Biology operates on a different scale, but the same rules apply. The human body is a bioelectric organism. Nerves transmit electrical impulses, muscles respond to ionic gradients, organs synchronize through oscillatory signals. Copper functions as the interface element between chemistry and electricity. It is the translator. When copper is in the correct state, signals propagate cleanly. When copper is oxidized, signals scatter. This is not philosophical, it is measurable. The resonant field is not an aura. It is the sum of coherent electrical, chemical, and oscillatory activity within a biological system. Health corresponds to signal clarity, phase alignment, energetic efficiency. Disease correlates with signal distortion, phase mismatch, energetic waste. Copper, specifically Cu1, is one of the few elements capable of operating across all these domains simultaneously. That is why it appears everywhere. Life requires precision. Why this chapter matters. Without understanding resonance, copper appears to be just another micronutrient. Without understanding copper, frequency appears abstract. Together they form a functional system. Tesla sensed this intuitively. Modern biology is just now catching up. Setting the stage for the human conductor. If copper conducts energy and frequency governs organization, then the human body is not a passive recipient of healing, it is an active conductor. The next chapter explores this idea directly, how copper transforms the human body from a biochemical machine into a bioelectrical system capable of restoration. Chapter 5, the human conductor. The body does not merely run on chemistry, it runs on coherence. Modern medicine describes the human body as a collection of systems: nervous, immune, endocrine, and metabolic. This framing is useful but incomplete. It describes components, not coordination. Coordination requires conduction. At the most fundamental level, the human body is an electrochemical organism. Every thought, every movement, every repair process depends on the controlled movement of electrons and ions. Chemistry provides the materials. Electricity provides the order. Copper sits precisely at the intersection of both. Bioelectricity is not optional. Long before organs form, life establishes electrical gradients. Embryonic development relies on voltage differentials to determine structure. Wound healing depends on electric fields to guide cellular migration. Neural networks function through rhythmic electrical firing. These are not secondary effects, they are primary drivers. The body maintains bioelectrical order through membrane potentials, ion channels, redox signaling, and mitochondrial electron flow. Copper is embedded in each of these processes, not as bulk material, but as a precision element. Copper in blood, brain, and tissue. Copper distribution in the body is highly regulated. In the blood, copper is transported bound to proteins, not free-floating. In the brain, copper supports synaptic signaling, neurotransmitter synthesis, and axonal targeting. In connective tissue, copper-dependent enzymes regulate collagen cross-linking and structural integrity. These roles require copper to cycle between oxidation states safely. Only Cu1 can perform this role without generating oxidative chaos. When copper is delivered incorrectly, these systems do not fail catastrophically. They degrade quietly. The conductive body. Think of the body as a circuit. Cells are capacitors, membranes are insulators, ion channels are switches, mitochondria are generators. Copper is the conductor that links them. Without adequate conductive integrity, signals weaken, response times slow, repair becomes inefficient, fatigue becomes chronic. This is not aging. It is electrical inefficiency.
Copper deficiency has signal loss. Copper deficiency is often diagnosed with blood levels. This approach misses the point. Deficiency is not merely absence, it is loss of function. A person may have measurable copper yet suffer from low energy, poor wound healing, cognitive fog, and immune instability. These symptoms reflect impaired signal conduction, not just mineral storage. Copper cannot reach its destination or arrives in the wrong form. It's functionally absent. Healing has recoherence. Healing is not simply repair, it is recoordination. Cells must receive signals, interpret them correctly, respond in synchrony. Copper facilitates this by enabling clean electron transfer and stable redox cycling. When copper pathways are restored, the body does not need to be forced into healing. It remembers how. This is why copper-based interventions can appear disproportionately effective when correctly implemented. They are not adding capacity, they are removing interference. The body as an instrument. An instrument does not create music on its own. It responds to resonance. The human body is no different. When frequency, whether biochemical, electrical, or environmental, interacts with a body equipped to conduct it, harmony emerges. When conduction fails, noise dominates. Copper determines which outcome prevails. Why this reframes health. Health is not a static state. It is a dynamic balance of signals. Copper's role is not to overpower biology, but to enable communication with it. This is why copper appears everywhere where life demands precision. Brain development, energy production, immune regulation, tissue repair. And this is why misuse creates confusion rather than collapse. Preparing to heal the earth. If the human body is a conductor, then its relationship with the environment matters. Copper does not operate in isolation. It interfaces with microbes, ecosystems, and planetary biology. The next chapter expands this view outward, from individual healing to ecological restoration. Chapter 6, Healing the Earth with BioCU1. A system that cannot heal its environment will eventually fail to heal itself. Healing does not stop at the skin, the cell, or the mitochondrion.
What affects the body affects the ecosystem, and what degrades the ecosystem ultimately returns to the body. Copper has always occupied this boundary between life and environment. For millennia, copper has been used to control microbial growth, preserve water, and protect crops. Yet modern applications often repeat the same mistake, even in human supplementation, using the wrong form in the wrong way for the wrong reasons. BioCU1 was developed to break that pattern. Antimicrobial does not mean destructive. Most antimicrobial strategies operate on a scorched earth philosophy. They aim to kill broadly, quickly, and indiscriminately. This approach creates immediate results but long-term consequences. Antibiotic resistance, microbiome collapse, environmental toxicity. Copper offers a fundamentally different mechanism. Copper does not kill by poisoning. It kills by disrupting microbial electron transport and membrane integrity, a process microbes cannot easily adapt to, but only when copper is in the correct redox state. Why CU1 matters in microbial control. CU1 penetrates microbial membranes more effectively than CU2. Once inside, it interferes with respiratory enzymes, DNA replication, membrane potential stability. This action is rapid and decisive, yet nonspecific resistance does not develop. Microbes cannot learn to bypass fundamental electron disruption without losing viability. CU2, by contrast, oxidizes prematurely, binds indiscriminately, causes collateral tissue irritation, loses efficacy over time. BioCU1 leverages CU1 precisely because it aligns with biology rather than overwhelming it. Topical healing without ecological cost. Many topical antimicrobials sterilize skin. This is not healing. It is ecological collapse at the micro scale. Healthy skin hosts a dynamic microbiome that protects against pathogens, regulates inflammation, supports barrier integrity. BioCU1 formulations are designed to suppress harmful bacteria, preserve beneficial microbial balance, support tissue regeneration, avoid resistance development. This balance is only possible when copper is delivered in a controlled, reduced state and stabilized appropriately, most effectively in oil-based systems that prevent oxidation. From wounds to regeneration. Copper plays a dual role in wound environments: antimicrobial defense, tissue regeneration signaling. Copper plays a dual role in wound environments. Number one, antimicrobial defense, and number two, tissue regeneration signaling. CU1 supports angiogenesis, a collagen formation, and cellular migration, all essential for proper healing. Unlike conventional antiseptics that stall repair while killing microbes, copper accelerates the transition from defense to regeneration. This is not accidental. It is biological design. Environmental resonance and sustainability. Copper is a naturally occurring element. When used intelligently, it does not accumulate destructively, it cycles. BioCU1 applications are designed to minimize environmental load, avoid persistent toxic residues, integrate into natural biogeochemical cycles. This stands in stark contrast to synthetic antimicrobials that persist, bioaccumulate, and disrupt ecosystems long after their intended use. Healing the earth does not require abandoning technology. It requires aligning technology with nature's rules. Copper resistance, a false fear. The fear of copper resistance mirrors early fears about antimicrobial overuse, but it misunderstands mechanism. Resistance emerges when organisms adapt to specific biochemical targets. Copper action is multimodal and fundamental. It interferes with the core electron transfer processes that cannot be altered without destroying viability. This is why copper surfaces remain effective centuries after introduction, and why BioCU1 applications retain potency without escalation. BioCU1 as an ecological tool. BioCU1 is not positioned as a universal solution. It is a precision tool. Its proper use includes wound defense, dermatological restoration, antimicrobial protection, pet and veterinary care, sustainable hygiene applications. In each case, the goal is not domination, but restoration of balance. Why this matters now? The world faces converging crises: antibiotic resistance, chronic inflammation, environmental toxicity, immune dysregulation. These problems share a common thread: systems push beyond balance. Copper, returned to its proper form, offers a rare opportunity to intervene without creating new problems. From earth to chemistry. To understand why BioCU1 behaves differently, we must examine the underlying chemistry of how CU1 activates pathways that CU2 cannot. The next chapter moves inward again into molecular detail, where healing is not a metaphor, but a sequence of reactions. Chapter 7, 1022. Healing does not occur because the body wishes it to. It occurs because specific chemical events happen in the correct order. When those events are disrupted, healing stalls. When they are restored, healing resumes, often rapidly and decisively. Copper, in its reduced CU1 state, sits at the center of that sequence. From injury to signal. Every injury begins the same way: disruption. Cells rupture, membranes depolarize, local electrical gradients collapse. Within milliseconds, the body must decide whether the site becomes inflamed, infected, fibrotic, or regenerative. This decision is not conscious, it's chemical. Copper participates in the earliest moments of this response by regulating redox balance, reactive oxygen species, ROS signaling, electron flow stabilization. Contrary to popular belief, ROS are not inherently harmful. In controlled bursts, they function as signals, recruiting immune cells and initiating repair. Copper-dependent enzymes determine whether ROS act as messengers or weapons. CU1 enables control. CU2 amplifies chaos. Copper and redox precision. Redox reactions are electron changes. Life depends on their timing and localization. CU1 function as a reversible redox participant. It can donate an electron. It can accept an electron. It can do so repeatedly without structural damage. This makes CU1 ideal for catalytic roles in enzymes that must operate rhythmically. CU2 lacks this flexibility. It tends to remain oxidized, generating uncontrolled oxidative pressure. Healing requires precision redox cycling, not sustained oxidation. Mitochondria, the regeneration engine. No tissue heals without energy. ATP production surges during repair as cells divide, migrate, and synthesize new structural components. Copper-dependent enzymes within mitochondria ensure this surge is possible. CU1 enables assembly of cytochrome C oxidase, restoration of electron transport chain efficiency, and reduction of electron leakage and oxidative stress. This combination allows mitochondria to increase output without overheating the system. Fatigue is not the absence of energy. It is the inability to produce energy cleanly. Angiogenesis and structural renewal. Healing tissue requires oxygen and nutrients. Copper is essential for angiogenesis, the formation of new blood vessels. CU1 activates pathways that stimulate endothelial cell migration, promote capillary formation, regulate extracellular matrix remodeling. These processes are tightly coordinated. Too little copper in the wound, ischemic. Too much oxidized copper and the inflammation dominates. Again, form governs outcome. Collagen is not enough. Collagen production is often cited as copper's primary benefit in skin and tissue repair. This is incomplete. Collagen must be correctly cross-linked, properly aligned, integrated into existing tissue architecture. Copper-dependent enzymes ensure structural integrity rather than scar formation. This distinction separates repair from regeneration. Scar tissue closes wounds. Regenerative tissue restores function. The difference between killing and healing. Many treatments focus on eliminating pathogens. This is necessary, but insufficient. Healing requires pathogen control, inflammation resolution, tissue reconstruction, and signal normalization. CU1 contributes to all four. CU2 contributes primarily to the first and often worsens the second. This is why copper-based approaches that ignore oxidation state produce mixed results. Integration with other healing compounds. Copper does not act alone. In properly formulated systems, CU1 synergizes with lipids that stabilize membranes, antioxidants that buffer redox shifts, botanicals that modulate inflammation, and cannabinoids that regulate pain and immune tone. These interactions are not addictive. They are multiplicative, but only when copper chemistry is respected. Why oil-based stabilization matters. Water accelerates oxidation. CU1 exposed to aqueous environments rapidly converts to CU2. Oil-based systems slow this process, preserving copper's reduced state long enough for biological interaction. This is not a formulation preference, it is a chemical necessity. BioCU1 exists because this principle was honored, not ignored. From chemistry to frequency. Chemical reactions do not occur in isolation. They are influenced by temperature, pH, electrical potential, and oscillatory signals. Copper's dual role as chemical catalyst and electrical conductor makes it uniquely sensitive to frequency-based modulation. This is where chemistry meets resonance and where the next chapter begins. Chapter 8, Frequency, Medicine, and the Harmonizer. Chemistry moves matter, frequency organizes it. Medicine has always treated matter first and signals second. Drugs alter chemistry, surgery alters structure. Devices intervene mechanically. These approaches work, but only to a point. What they largely ignore is organization. Biology does not fail because molecules disappear. It fails because signals lose coherence. Frequency medicine exists to restore that coherence. The body is a frequency responsive system. Every biological process operates with oscillatory parameters. Neurons fire rhythmically, heart cells synchronize through electrical pacing. Circadian systems entrain to light cycles. Mitochondrial activity follows metabolic rhythms. These oscillations are not noise, they are controlled systems. When frequency alignment is lost, chemistry compensates inefficiently. Systems appear not because the body lacks resources, but because it cannot coordinate them. Frequency medicine does not replace chemistry, it reorders it. Copper's unique role in frequency reception. Not all tissues respond equally to frequency-based interventions. Response depends on conductivity. Copper is uniquely positioned here. It conducts electrons efficiently. It participates in redox signaling. It stabilizes oscillatory enzyme activity. Cu1 enhances a cell's ability to frequency by maintaining electron mobility without oxidative overload. Cu2 interferes with this responsiveness by introducing noise, excess charge without regulation. This distinction determines whether frequency becomes therapeutic or disruptive. Sound, light, and electromagnetic modulation. Frequency medicine spans multiple modalities: acoustic, sound; photonic, light; electromagnetic, EMF. Each interacts with biological systems differently, yet all require signal transduction to be effective. Copper-dependent pathways influence membrane polarization, ion channel sensitivity, mitochondrial resonance, and a neural signal propagation. When copper pathways are intact, frequency modulation produces predictable psychological responses. When they are not, results vary widely. This explains why frequency therapies show promise in controlled settings, but inconsistency in broad application. The missing variable is often copper biology. Misophonia, neural noise, and signal filtering. Misophonia, an extreme emotional response to specific sounds, offers a clear example of frequency dysregulation. The issue is not sound volume, it is signal processing. Neural circuits misinterpret benign frequencies as threats. Copper-dependent neurotransmitter pathways and mitochondrial energy regulation play a role in maintaining proper sensory filtering. Restoring copper-mediated signal clarity does not block sound, it recalibrates interpretation. This principle extends beyond misophonia into anxiety, sensory overload, and autonomic imbalance. The Bio-CU1 frequency harmonizer concept. The Bio-CU1 frequency harmonizer is not a device that imposes healing. It is designed to support biological reception. Its conceptual foundation rests on three pillars. Number one, detection, identifying disruptive frequencies. Number two, modulation, introducing counterbalancing resonance. And number 3, integration, allowing the body to resolve the imbalance naturally. Copper's role is not to generate frequency, but to mediate interaction between applied signals and biological systems. A harmonizer is an interface, not a cure. EMF, grounding and environmental coherence. Modern environments expose humans to unprecedented electromagnetic complexity. While not inherently harmful, chronic exposure without grounding increases biological noise. Copper's presence in grounding systems, conductive pathways, and bioelectric interfaces help stabilize electrical gradients. The Earth itself operates as a resonant system. Grounding restores reference points that allow biological systems to recalibrate. Copper, again, is the conductor. Why frequency medicine requires restraint. Frequency is powerful precisely because it is non-invasive, but power without precision becomes interference. Effective frequency medicine must respect biological limits, avoid overstimulation, integrate with biochemical readiness, prioritize coherence over intensity. Copper sufficiency and proper copper form are prerequisites, not optional enhancements. From intervention to collaboration. The future of medicine is not control, it's collaboration. Frequency medicine collaborates with biology by restoring communication rather than forcing outcomes. Copper enables that collaboration by maintaining signal fidelity. This is not alternative medicine, it is next generation physiology. Preparing for the business of healing. Innovation does not exist in isolation. To bring copper and frequency-based therapies into the world requires infrastructure, ethics, and responsibility. The next chapter addresses that practical reality of building a healing enterprise without compromising truth. Chapter 9, the business of healing. Truth that cannot survive commerce was never truth. It was theory. That's a good one. Healing technologies do not change the world by existing. They change the world by reaching people. That requires business. For many scientists and healers, this is uncomfortable territory. Commerce is seen as corrupt. Profit is viewed as suspect. Yet the absence of ethical business does not protect truth. It leaves the field open to distortion. BioCU1 was built with this reality in mind. Why healing requires infrastructure? Discovery without delivery is incomplete. To translate copper science into real-world impact requires manufacturing discipline, regulatory compliance, quality control, education, and distribution. Each layer introduces pressure to simplify, exaggerate, or compromise. The temptation is to reduce complex truths into slogans. Resisting that temptation is a business decision. Truth before scale. Most health brands begin with scale as the goal. BioCU1 began with fidelity. Key decisions reflected this priority. Choosing CU1 despite formulation difficulty, stabilizing copper in oil rather than water, rejecting cheap oxidized salts, and educating rather than obscuring the chemistry. These choices slowed growth, they increased costs, they limited immediate market reach, they preserved truth. Regulation as an ally, not an enemy. Regulatory frameworks are often portrayed as barriers to innovation. In reality, they are filters. NDIN filings, GMP standards, and trademark protections do not stifle legitimate innovation. They expose weak claims and careless chemistry. BioCU1 engaged regulation proactively, not defensively. This ensured reproducibility, safety, traceability, and legal clarity. Compliance was treated not as an obstacle, but a validation. Intellectual property and responsibility. Protecting intellectual property is not about monopolization. It is about preventing misuse. Copper chemistry applied incorrectly can cause harm. Ensuring that BioCU1 formulations are not copied without understanding protects both users and the reputation of copper science itself. IP, when used ethically, preserves standards. Intellectual property. Education as a business model. Selling products without education creates dependency. Educating without access creates frustration. BioCU1 integrates both. Customers are not treated as passive consumers, but as participants in understanding copper form, biological context, frequency readiness, and proper use. This model does not maximize impulse purchases, it maximizes long-term trust. Avoiding the wellness trap. The wellness industry often replaces rigor with enthusiasm. Claims escalate, evidence thins, everything becomes miraculous. BioCU1 rejected this path. No universal cures, no exaggerated timelines, no suppression of limitations. Healing is framed as a process, not a promise. Commerce aligned with consciousness. Profit and purpose are not opposite, they are feedback mechanisms. When a product genuinely helps, return follows, reputation grows, scale becomes sustainable. When claims exceed reality, backlash emerges, trust erodes, and the mission collapses. The business of healing must answer to biology first and to the market second. From product to platform, BioCU1 is not positioned as a single product line, it is a platform. Copper chemistry, frequency integration, regenerative design, and ethical deployment. Each application builds upon the same core principles. The coherence is not accidental, it is strategic. Preparing the legacy. Healing enterprises outlive founders only when the principles outlast personalities. The decision made by BioCU1's formation were designed not just for success, but for continuity, which raises the final human question: what is healing worth if it does not serve those who serve? Chapter 10, Veterans, Energy, and Legacy. War does not only wound the body, it fractures the signal. Military service demands a level of sustained physiological output that few civilian systems ever experience. Extended hypervigilance, disrupted sleep cycles, environmental toxicity, trauma exposure, and repeated adrenaline surges place extraordinary strain on the human bioelectrical system. Veterans do not return broken, they return overextended. Healing them requires understanding energy, not metaphorically, but biologically. Combat stress as energetic depletion. The nervous system evolved for accurate threat, not chronic activation. In combat environments, stress hormones remain elevated, circadian rhythms fractured, mitochondrial output is pushed relentlessly, recovery windows disappear. Over time, this produces a state of bioelectric exhaustion. The body adapts, but at a cost. PTSD, chronic pain, inflammation, and cognitive fatigue are not psychological failures. They are signal processing injuries. Copper's role in neuroresilience. Copper-dependent enzymes regulate neurotransmitter synthesis, antioxidant defense, mitochondrial respiration, and synaptic plasticity. Under prolonged stress, copper demand increases. If copper delivery is impaired or delivered in the wrong form, neural signaling degrades. This degradation manifests as sensory overload, emotional volatility, hyperactivity, difficulty returning to baseline. Restoring copper pathways does not erase memory, it restores capacity. PTSD as a signal entrapment. PTSD is often framed as a memory disorder. Biologically, it is more accurately described as a failure to disengage threat signaling. Neural circuits remain locked in high-frequency alert states. This parasympathetic system struggles to reassert control. Energy remains trapped in readiness. Copper-mediated mitochondrial efficiency and neurotransmitter balance support. Signal dampening, re-entry into coherence, and restoration of baseline rhythms. This is not sedation, it is recalibration. Frequency, trauma, and re-entraining the nervous system. Trauma alters frequency response. Certain sounds, lights, and environmental patterns trigger disappropriate reactions, not because the stimuli are harmful, but because the nervous system misinterprets them. Frequency-based approaches, when paired with copper readiness, offer a path towards safe re-entrainment. Gradual signal exposure, resonance-based calming, restoration of autonomic balance. Copper enables the nervous system to receive these interventions without overloading. Pain, inflammation, and energy leakage. Chronic pain is often treated as localized pathology. In veterans, it frequently reflects systematic energy leakage, where repair processes cannot keep pace with the inflammatory signaling. Copper's role in mitochondrial efficiency, oxidative stress regulation, and tissue repair allows the body to reclaim energy previously lost to chronic inflammation. Healing pain is not about suppression, it is about closing the loop. Veterans as proof of concept. Veterans represent one of the most demanding test populations for healing technologies. If a system can support recovery in individuals exposed to extreme stress, environmental toxins, neurological trauma, and metabolic exhaustion, then its validity extends beyond theory. By OCU1's alignment with veteran healing is not symbolic, it's functional. From service to stewardship. Many veterans struggle not because they lack purpose, but because their biology no longer supports the level of engagement they are capable of. Restoring energy restores agency. This transition from service to stewardship requires healing symptoms that respect dignity, autonomy, psychological reality. Copper, properly applied, becomes part of that restoration. Legacy is not what is built, it is what is sustained. Healing veterans is not charity, it is a responsibility. A society that extracts energy without restoring it collapses. The Bio-CU1 mission extends beyond products into legacy structures designed to protect intellectual integrity, support long-term access, and ensure ethical continuity. Because healing must outlive the moment. Toward the blueprint, veterans understand systems. They understand structure, order, and consequences. The final chapters return to this understanding, connecting copper, energy, and the universal design principles into a coherent framework. Chapter 11, 369, The Divine Blueprint. Patterns repeat because they work. Human beings have often searched for meaning in numbers. Too often, that search drifts into superstition. Yet beneath symbolism lies something far more grounded: structure. Nature organizes itself mathematically, not poetically, not spiritually, but efficiently. The recurrence of patterns is not coincidence. It is optimization. The framework, often referred to it as 369, is best understood not as numerology, but as a universal cycle of organization, one that appears wherever energy becomes form. 3 phases of every system. Across physics, biology, and engineering, complex systems consistently follow a 3-phase progression. Number 1, initiation. Energy enters the system. Number 2, circulation. Energy moves, distributes, and stabilizes. Number 3, integration. Energy resolves into structure or output. This pattern is not symbolic. It is observable. Electrical systems initiate current, distribute load, and resolve output. Biological systems signal, respond, and adapt. Healing processes inflame, repair, and restore. This is the functional meaning behind 3. 6, balance and return. Where 3 introduces motion, 6 governs equilibrium. In closed systems, circulation must return to center. In biology, this is homeostasis. In electronics, impedance matching. In ecosystems, feedback regulation. 6 represents symmetry, balance, stabilization, return pathways. Copper-dependent enzymes operate heavily in this phase, maintaining redox balance, regulating oxidative stress, and ensuring signals do not overshoot. Without 6, systems spiral. With 6, systems sustain. 9, completion and emergence. 9 represents resolution, not termination, but emergence. When energy has been initiated and balanced, it integrates into something new. Tissue regenerates. Learning consolidates. Systems evolve. 9 is where complexity becomes coherent. In copper biology, this appears when mitochondrial efficiency is restored, inflammation resolves, signaling returns to baseline, function exceeds pre-injury levels. Healing is not a return to the past. It is an emergent upgrade. Copper as the blueprint element. Copper's unique ability to cycle between states allows it to participate in all 3 phases. It initiates electron transfer, it stabilizes redox balance, it integrates energy into usable work. Few elements operate across such domains without degradation. This is why copper appears repeatedly wherever life demands precision. Sacred geometry without superstition. Sacred geometry is often dismissed because it is misused. At its core, it describes efficient spatial organization. Hexagonal structures, spiral growth, and wave interference patterns emerge because they minimize energy expenditure while maximizing stability. Copper-based enzymes, mitochondrial membranes, and neural networks all reflect these principles, not because they are sacred, but because they are efficient. Calling this divine is not theological, it's observational. Why science and meaning diverged. Modern science abandoned meaning to preserve objectivity. In doing so, it lost context. Meaning does not replace evidence, it frames it. The reintroduction of pattern recognition without abandoning rigor allows science to explain not just how systems work, but why certain configurations persist. Copper persists because it fits the blueprint, reuniting mind, body, and system. 3 is mind, 6 is body, 9 is integration. Mind signal, body balance, integration function. This framework mirrors neural signaling, metabolic regulation, regenerative healing. It is not imposed, it is observed. The danger of misinterpretation. When patterns are divorced from discipline, they become belief systems. This book rejects that path. The 369 framework is not a doctrine. It is a lens, useful only when it clarifies measurable reality. Copper clarifies because it operates at the intersection of signal, balance, and integration. Preparing for the future. Understanding the blueprint is not an endpoint. It is a responsibility. The final chapter looks forward toward integrative medicine, ethical technology, and a future in which healing aligns with biological intelligence rather than overriding it. Chapter 12, the future of copper consciousness. Every revolution begins quietly when understanding replaces force. The future of medicine will not be defined by stronger interventions. It will be defined by smarter alignment. For centuries, progress has been measured by control, stronger drugs, more aggressive treatments, faster suppression of symptoms. This approach delivered miracles and consequences. Copper stands at the threshold of a different future, not as a cure-all, not as a trend, but as a return to biological intelligence. From intervention to integration. The next era of healing will prioritize integration over intervention. Rather than overriding systems, medicine will increasingly ask, what does the body require to restore coherence? What signals are missing, distorted, or blocked? What elements enable communication rather than domination? Copper, in its proper form, answers these questions precisely because it does not force outcomes, it facilitates them. Integrative medicine without compromise. Integrative medicine has often struggled with credibility, not because it lacks insight, because it lacks discipline. The future demands both. Copper consciousness represents an integrative model that respects biochemistry, honors physics, incorporates frequency, demands regulatory rigor, and rejects exaggerated claims. This is not alternative medicine. It is comprehensive medicine. Non-toxic therapeutics as the standard. Toxicity has been normalized in medicine under the assumption that benefits must outweigh the harm. This trade-off is increasingly untenable. The future belongs to systems that minimize collateral damage, preserve biological reserves, and support long-term resilience. Copper, when delivered as Cu1 and stabilized intelligently, offers antimicrobial, regenerative, and signaling benefits without cumulative toxicity. This is not an optimization, it is a correction. Frequency-based healing comes of age. Frequency medicine will mature when it stops pretending to replace chemistry and begins collaborating with it. Copper is the bridge. As bioelectric understanding deepens, frequency-based approaches will become more targeted, more predictable, more measurable. Not because the frequencies change, but because the biology becomes more receptive. The 100-year vision? True healing technologies must think in decades, not quarters. The Bio-1 CU vision extends beyond products into education, ethical manufacturing, veteran support, ecological responsibility, and intellectual stewardship. Copper consciousness is not about market dominance, it's about continuity. Returning humanity to balance. Humanity's greatest challenge is not disease, it's imbalance. Energy without regulation, technology without wisdom, growth without grounding. Copper, properly understood, offers a model for balance. Conductive, not coercive. Responsive, not reactive. Powerful, yet restrained. The proper copper principle. The proper copper principle is simple. Form matters, context matters, intelligence matters. When copper is returned to its proper state, biology responds with clarity. When systems are aligned rather than forced, healing emerges naturally. This principle extends beyond copper. It applies to medicine, business, environment, and legacy. A closing reflection. This book is not a conclusion. It is an invitation to question assumptions, to respect complexity, to heal without harm. Copper has waited patiently through centuries of misuse. Now it returns quietly, precisely, and correctly. Join me in the learning of Proper Copper 1 and other amazing books to come in the future. Epilogue. The Proper Copper returns humanity to balance. Balance is not achieved by force. It is restored by understanding. Every era leaves behind a lesson it did not fully understand. For centuries, copper was used, traded, and revered, yet rarely questioned. When modern science arrived, it dissected copper into parts, measurements, and dosages, believing that precision alone equaled truth. In doing so, it overlooked something essential. Form. Form matters. Copper was never meant to be treated as a generic mineral. It was meant to function as a conductor of electrons, of signals, of biological intelligence. When that role was ignored, copper was blamed for failures that were never their own. This book exists to set the record straight. What was never broken? Human biology was not designed incorrectly, it was misinformed. The body knows how to heal. It always has. What it requires is not domination, but alignment. Chemistry that respects physics, interventions that honor rhythm, and elements delivered in the form life recognizes. Copper returned to its proper state does not impose healing, it removes interference. Why this matters beyond copper. Copper is the case study, but not the endpoint. The lessons revealed here apply broadly, that oxidation state alters function, that signaling governs outcome, that frequency organizes matter, that biology responds best to cooperation, not coercion. Medicine's future depends on remembering these truths. A responsibility, not a revelation. This work does not claim discovery in isolation. It stands on centuries of observation, decades of research, and the quiet confirmation of biology itself. What makes this moment different is not knowledge, but willingness. Willingness to question established practices. Willing to distinguish convenience from correctness. Willingness to slow down when speed compromises integrity. Copper waited. Biology waited. The question is whether humanity is ready. The return to balance. Balance does not mean perfection, it means responsiveness. A balanced system adapts without collapsing. A balanced body heals without excess. A balanced society innovates without destroying its foundation. Copper, properly understood, models this balance precisely, powerfully, restrained, essential, and humble. In closing, if there was one truth to carry forward, it's this. Healing is not about adding more. It is about correcting what is misunderstood. The proper copper has returned, not as a trend, not as a cure-all, but as a reminder that when intelligence is restored, healing follows. Quietly, naturally, and correctly. By Jarrett K. St. Amand, my hero. So I read the book here. The copper is not a trend, it's a biological truth. The synopsis is, copper is one of the most misunderstood, misrepresented elements in modern health and medicine. In The Truth About Copper, Jarrett K. St. Amand challenges decades of misinformation, fear-based narratives, and incomplete science to reveal copper's true role in cellular energy production, immune balance, neurological signaling, skin regeneration, and systemic repair. Drawing from emerging research, real-world applications, and advanced copper formulations, this book explains why form, oxidation state, and delivery method matter more than dosage alone, and how getting copper wrong can be just as harmful as deficiency. This is not speculation, it's not marketing. This is elemental biology reclaimed. Jarrett K. St. Amand, former U.S. combat Marine who served in Operation Restore Hope, dedicated to healing humanity with copper education today, IOCU1.com.
Come to order. 1 million Americans died from COVID-19. Some estimate as many as 15 million people died worldwide from COVID-19. Publicly, Anthony Fauci promoted the theory that the virus arose naturally, while privately, he was well aware of a mountain of evidence suggesting the virus originated in the lab. The American people deserve answers. The American people deserve to know why dangerous research was funded by NIAID in a totalitarian country, in a lab that lacked acceptable safety standards. The decision to fund dangerous gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China, will likely go down in history as perhaps one of the worst public health decisions. Frankly, the American people deserve an apology. I hope today Dr. Fauci will come clean, admit it was a mistake to fund dangerous research in China, admit that the risk of this dangerous research exceeded any possible benefits, ask forgiveness, and pledge to help our government devise safeguards so a man-made epidemic never happens again. Instead of an apology, you have for years avoided responsibility. Regarding the lockdowns, you argue that you did not personally issue every lockdown order, close every school, or impose every mandate. But officials across the country invoked your authority to justify these decisions. And you presented your recommendations not as judgments open to debate, but as dictates of science itself. Your own words demonstrate that you understood the influence you exercised. On March 14th, 2020, you wrote that the task force recommendations were driven by me, yourself, Deb, and CDC. The next day, you wrote that you had convinced Mayor Bill de Blasio to close the New York City schools, so you were involved. That same night, Governor Gavin Newsom's chief of staff told you that the governor had decided to close California schools, bars, and restaurants after watching you on television. Presidents, governors, mayors, school boards, corporations, and Congress all bear responsibility for the decisions they made. The COVID lockdown, however, could never have been inflicted without you aiding and abetting the crime. Children lost years of education. Small businesses built over a lifetime disappeared. Patients delayed cancer screenings and other medical care. Families were separated from dying relatives. Workers were ordered to accept a medical procedure or lose their jobs. Worship assembly, employment, education, and travel were restricted in the name of science. While you did not impose every restriction, you used your public authority to justify them. While you concluded publicly that COVID occurred naturally, your private record tells a different story. In early 2020, your hand-picked virologist warned that the virus appeared to have been manipulated in the lab. In a conference call concerning the origin of the virus, all but two of the participants believed deliberate insertion was possible. Your concern was not merely theoretical. That same week, you led an urgent effort to determine whether your own agency had funded the research related to these experiments that were now under suspicion. Hours later, your assistant reported that the Wuhan experiments had indeed been reviewed and approved by the NIH. Those were not the actions of officials who believed that a research-related origin was an absurd conspiracy theory. They were the actions of officials urgently trying to determine whether their agency funding was connected to the research under discussion, connected to the pandemic. You could not hide that your agency had funded the Wuhan research or your long history of defending gain-of-function research. The only alternative left was to argue that COVID-19 did not originate in the Wuhan lab. You were not a detached observer. You had an institutional interest in the public believing that federally funded research had nothing to do with the pandemic. It was a conflict of interest from the very beginning. The authors of the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 privately had serious doubts about a natural origin. Within days, though, they flipped, and they all wrote in proximal origin that the virus was almost certainly not a laboratory construct. That paper was then used by the government and the media and you to discredit who were asking the same question that you and the authors were asking yourselves privately. You even cited proximal origin from the White House podium. You held it out as evidence that the virus could not have been engineered, but you didn't disclose your role in the discussions that preceded the writing of the paper. You did not disclose the author's original concerns. You did not reveal that you had been part of the paper, that you had read and offered editorial comments on the paper before it was published, before you began using it as evidence that it couldn't have originated in the lab. You did not disclose that you had immediately investigated yourself whether NIAID funding might be connected to the research. You did not tell the American people the full story. Duly released private messages indicate that the doubts with the authors and others didn't disappear after the publication. So while this was being waived at the White House to show that it couldn't come from the lab, the authors were still privately continuing to assign a meaningful probability to a laboratory origin, one thing in public and another in private. Some of the same scientists discussed avoiding email and carefully managing communications that might eventually be obtained under the Freedom of Information Act. The pattern is straightforward. Privately, there was alarm. then an immediate inquiry to see if NIAID's possible exposure to funding, then a rapid public declaration of certainty, continued private doubt, and then years of resistance to disclosure. The question is why? The only logical answer is that your primary concern was avoiding culpability. Your primary concern was hiding the fact that you had approved the funding for this dangerous research. Your support of gain-of-function research is extensive and long-standing. In 2011, your agency funded Ron Fauci's laboratory when it mutated the avian flu until it could spread through the air between mammals. This was the tipping point. This is when others became worried. You funded this. You advocated for this. The federal government's own biosecurity board, though, recommended withholding the details of these experiments because of the danger the research posed. People were concerned that publishing it was publishing a roadmap to creating bioweapons around the world. But you sided with the gain-of-function scientist Fauci and argued that the benefits of publishing the research far outweighed the risks. You defended this avian flu transmissibility experiments as critical research. You wrote that even if a scientist became infected and triggered a pandemic, the benefits of the gain-of-function experiments outweighed the risk. In 2014, your agency, NIAID, began funding the Wuhan bat coronavirus work. In 2015, Ralph Baric and the Chinese scientist Shi Zhengli published NIAID-supported research combining a bat coronavirus spike protein with a SARS backbone. The resulting virus could infect human airway cells. It's a novel virus that now can infect human cells. It gained transmissibility, it gained function. In 2018, the same group of scientists, EcoHealth, Baric, Shi, and their collaborators submitted the Diffuse proposal, which involved the insertion of a furin cleavage site into the coronavirus. DARPA rejected it as too dangerous. When COVID was sequenced, though, early on in January of 2020, within days, scientists discovered that, lo and behold, it had a novel furin cleavage site, just as had been proposed in the Diffuse project. This was either an extraordinary coincidence or a smoking gun, evidence that the Chinese had created COVID-19. It made the laboratory origin question more legitimate, and it made your categorical public denials indefensible. On May 11th, 2021, you told the Senate, the NIH has never, ever, and does not now fund gain-of-function research in Wuhan, in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. When I gave you the opportunity to correct the record, to reconsider the statement, you responded that you had never before lied to Congress. We were then told that only the government's narrowest regulation of definition counted here, that you could define gain of function in one way in which this wasn't gain of function, in which all of the common sense of the world would be thrown out, all of the idea that the mice were dying and the virus was more transmissible didn't matter because you had a technical definition that allowed you to fund it. But the real question is, was it dangerous? Was it a wise decision to fund this? And you haven't deviated from that. You've never admitted that it could have been a mistake funding this research in China. The American people weren't asking for a semantics debate over what is gain of function. They were asking, does common sense say this research was dangerous in Wuhan? They wanted to know whether their money-funded experiments in Wuhan that made bat coronaviruses better able to infect humans. The answer is yes. They wanted to know whether NIAID adequately supervised their work. The answer is no. When you defended this research, you described its benefits in the broadest terms. But when Congress demanded accountability, you hid behind the narrowest possible definition. You can't have it both ways. Your conduct concerning federal records raises further questions. It is a crime to destroy federal records. Yet our investigation reveals your assistant diligently reported that she deleted tons of emails. In 2024, you testified that you did not delete federal records. Who's telling the truth, you or your assistant? The committee has obtained repeated instructions from you telling federal officials to delete communications. On February 2nd, 2020, one day after Origin's call, you told Francis Collins, please delete this email after you read it. The committee asked for your voluntary cooperation to come today. Your appearance had to be compelled by subpoena. You're here today under duress. You're here today because of the court ordering it. President Biden issued you a sweeping pardon extending back to 2014, the same pardon he gave to his son Hunter. A pardon may protect a person from criminal prosecution, doesn't rewrite history. It does not erase documents. It does not convert a misleading statement into a truthful one. And it does not prevent Congress from establishing what happened. There will be another pandemic. There will be another crisis. And there will again be officials who insist that uncertainty must be hidden for the public's own good. They will demand obedience. They will invoke science. I am the science, as though it were a commandment. They will argue that government officials cannot be questioned because questioning them would undermine public trust. They have it backwards. It is secrecy that destroys trust. It is arrogance that destroys trust. It is censorship that destroys trust. And it is the refusal to admit error that destroys trust. That loss of trust may be your most damaging legacy. Trust can't be ordered. It has to be earned. No scientist is above scrutiny. No government official is beyond accountability. And no public servant has the right to treat the suffering of millions of Americans as a footnote to his preferred version of history. I now recognize Senator Peters for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I was talking with the mic off again. I don't know why I don't look at that when I first come in and turn that off, but hopefully you watched me do a mime there. If you can read lips, you know exactly what I said. Said I got back, I'm loosened up from doing the elliptical. I was on number 5 today. That's the tough one. I got in 186. Took a lot of effort, I can tell you. But it loosened me up. So earlier on, you heard the truth about copper. And then you see that what I'm doing are these challenges in order to change my body shape, change my blood pressure, and my overall health. So there's one way that you can be sure that what I'm telling you is factual. This was today. Let's see if it shows up. Nope, it's not going to show up because that wouldn't be fun. Why? Why other guys can do that with theirs? Let me see. Let me see if I turn it this way. Is that it? What the hell? You got to be kidding me. 218. The thing I was going to point out is every day it tells you your body age. And back when you go to history, I could go back to 30 days ago. Let's see, here's 1254. 0606. Keepers, that's a long way back. 23. Okay. So 228, 229, body age said 66. See? And what really sucks is when you're at 230, it says body age 66. See, I'm actually 67. And then here, when you go to 233, which was June, 233, ooh, body age 67. So I could put this up on, I don't know why it's glowing so much. Why is that? Looks like it's actually glowing. Does it look like that? Let me turn it this way, maybe. Look at, son of a bitch. Son of a bitches. Doesn't make any sense. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Be back again tomorrow too, but at night, early in the morning at 2 a.m., we'll have After Dark Mark, and I got a few things to talk about tonight on After Dark Mark. A few things to share from the past. Sometimes I'll tell stories from the past, some amazing stories, and then it makes you wonder if they're true or not. Well, you ever catch me in a lie or embellishing the truth? I hope you let me know. Hope you call me out on it. But the examples I'm doing are for you to see physical change in 31 days, and that's called the training season on Facebook. Is training season, in which I teach you how you can do different things. Go from not being able to do a push-up to doing 100 in a day, maybe, huh? Or not being able to do crunches to doing 1,000 in a day. Anita's done that many, so there's a process to it, and it takes a little attitude. So you can have the copper, which once you engage and start getting your body flowing, the copper goes into conducting all these different things that your body naturally does when it's stressed, when it's exercising. Your body, your liver, your bladder, your all these things. Bladder hopefully holds on, but your heart, all these things need certain nutrients, certain things at certain times during your workout, and that's what the copper does. Is you're inhibited now if you don't have it from having these things naturally happen in your body, and then of course supplements. If you're adding supplements like, D, or you're adding E or C, or you're taking a pain medication, like I took ibuprofen and a Tylenol this morning, it will help that work quicker. So that's up to you if you want to try it, whether you want to believe me or not. But there is a way for you to get 10% off or buy over the counter at the power station. And I was just in there and seen Tim. And when you go in there, tell them, hey, I heard about you on the show. I want to get a free shake. So you get a $9 Schwarzenegger or a berry shake. All right. And then tell them you've seen the show. You have to say that, of course, you've seen the show to get the shake naturally. Mark on the mark, or the truth about copper, if you've seen the truth about copper. So sometimes I don't get enough time to change the titles out, to change the graphics out. It comes off the same. But that's it for today. Thank you. And I will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. if you're here, or 2 a.m. if you're ready. Look at this ad wall. Ad walls. I gotta go do some